ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Section in the Bodhasara on what is called Munindra Dinacharya, the daily life of the sages. And this is something which is a very, as we have seen, an extremely intriguing section, because it does a little flip on the concept of waking up and going about the day. Whereas the day of the Ajnani is fraught with a lot of, Ajnani means the one who doesn't have self-knowledge, Atma Ajnanam Asti. So the one who has no self-knowledge is called Ajnani here. So the Ajnanis, where the Ajnani's day is fraught with a lot of tumult, conflict, fear, and a kind of a routinization, or some kind of a, becoming mundane. So the day of the Jnani is fraught with all that. Ajnani, the day of the Jnani is such that the waking up is actually, there is no waking up happening, because all actions are as though, and if there is a waking up happening, it is waking into knowledge from Ajnanam. If there is a washing of the face happening, the face is mumuksha, the desire for freedom. The washing is the act of washing is the study of the Shastra, and the water is the water of Shraddha and devotion. So very beautiful, what is that beautiful section talking about these parallels and this allegory of quote unquote waking up. And then, to appreciate this section, it helps to have some background in the regular person's waking up as a Vaidika. So if you are a Vaidika following the Vedic way of life, there are certain prescriptions on how to get up, how to start the day. All these prescriptions are there. And so this we will be stopping along the way to gain the sarasyam, the ruchi, the beauty of this, to understand and assimilate the beauty of the verses. We'll have to do a little stop and see which particular morning ritual or waking up ritual that particular verse what should I say, addresses. Because if we don't know the rituals that are there, prescribed rituals upon waking and prayer, all these things for the Vedic person, then we are not able to appreciate this very well. So that is what we'll be doing. We'll be juxtaposing the Jnani's life on these particular rituals. So there will be a transposition of these rituals onto the Jnani's life. And what does like for example, the water to wash the face is just regular water for a Ajnani, but for the Jnani the water turns into Shraddha. Now this was a general thing. Water, brushing of the teeth, all these things are Laukika Karma. Laukika Karma means regular mundane actions. But then there are Vaidika karmas also. There are religious actions that are prescribed, which if we know, we can appreciate the verses more. Okay, so now where are we? We are in the book. We are in my book, at least we are on the page 222, and if you are following the online version of Bodhasara, then we are on section 16 and verse number section 16 verse number 3 or something like that. I think we just finished verse number 3, but anyway we'll go through that. Jnana jnane tad vishayau तदहङ्कार एव च प्रकाश्यन्ते येन भूम्ना तदहं ह्यहमेव तत्. So jnanam cha ajnanam cha. So jnana jnane. So jnanam is knowledge, ajnanam is what? Ignorance. So tad vishayav. So jnanasya vishayah. So vishayav means the object of knowledge and the object of ignorance. Listen carefully, this is very important. So the object of knowledge means what? Anything that I know. Like what do I know? Pot. You know. Ayam ghataha. This is a pot. This is so the pot becomes an object of my cognition. Knowledge here can also be taken as cognition. And if it's a known pot that I see every day in my house, then it is a known pot, so it's an object of knowledge. Object of knowledge, object of cognition here used, somewhat synonymously. So the object of knowledge, the object of cognition, one. Okay, then the object of ignorance. Ignorance also has an object. Yes, supposing if I asked you what is Nilgai, so then you will say, oh, this Nilgai I don't know. Nilgai is some kind of a hybrid between a what is that, a horse and a bull and a horse in India. And it's got kind of a graceful build of a horse, but definitely it's bovine in structure at the same time, and it is kind of grayish, so that's why it is bluish. It's called blue cow in Hindi, Nilgai, but actually it's kind of what should I say, horse-like in its movements. So now Nilgai has become an object of knowledge. Before this, Nilgai was an object of ignorance. Correct? Yeah. So now what is he saying? Jnana jnane tad vishayau dvau. So these two means the object of my cognition and the objects of my ignorance. In fact, the object of ignorance also shines, even though you don't know it. The shine doesn't belong to the object, it belongs to the subject. The subject, I, shines the light that I don't know this particular animal called Nilgai. Never seen it, never understood it, don't know what it is. Or even if you say, I don't know Chinese, I only know Chinese food, I don't know Mandarin language. If you were supposed to saying that, then that also is an object of your ignorance. The object of knowledge, of course, lights up as what? I know this pot. I know this thought. I know this cat. This is a cat. This is a dog. So the object of knowledge shines, no doubt, in the mind. But then, very interestingly, the objects of ignorance also shine. But how can they shine when they are covered in ignorance? They shine as being covered in ignorance. So the light of all lights, Jyotisham Jyotihi, that light which is the light of cognition, the light of awareness, consciousness, what you want to call, can never be eclipsed, can never be hidden. And what is its job? Its job is to ferret out and shine the light on everything that is hidden from view. And what does it shine the light on? This is hidden from view. It shines the light on that, on the fact that it is hidden from view. And so therefore, this consciousness is also called jnanam. It's knowledge, and it's knowledge in its most ontological, most abstract sense, because this knowledge is something that never can become ignorant of itself. In fact, it shines the ignorance on every other thing. It shines it shines that there is ignorance. It shines the light of ignorance on everything that is unknown. And what is this light of ignorance? The light that brings ignorance to light. That is what I mean. So when you say, I don't know Chinese, I don't know Greek, I don't know Nilgai, I don't know this particular country even existed. Like even Timbuktu. We are fond of saying to go to Timbuktu, but then actually it's a country in Africa. So like this, it's a place. And so therefore, so I don't know this. So the I don't know also has to shine as I know, because that is what the I don't know is, a particular small thing from the standpoint of this all pervasive light. It's the object of I don't know is both spatial and temporal, and it is a particular object. So the object of I don't know has threefold limitations. Deshatah, by way of spatial limitation, by way of space it is constrained. Kalatah, by way of time it is constrained. So you cannot say, you can say I don't know this particular object, you can say that. This particular object, so the object occupies space, correct? So it is spatially constrained. Deshatah parichinnatvam asti. Parichinnatvam means a kind of a constriction is there, spatial limitation, spatial constriction. Then again, this object is there in a particular time or not, because when is the discussion happening? Right now. So right now we are dealing with a particular object. Like supposing if you say, I don't know Ramayana. So this Ramayana happened in this particular yuga and in this particular time. And then, and then so it is constrained by time, this historical epic, and whether you are talking of Valmiki's composition or whether you are talking of the story of Ramayana itself, both of them have time bound constraints. And then what? Spatial constraints. And then there is a third kind of a constraint, vastutaha parichinnatvam. Vastutaha means, when this Nilgai, for example, which is an object of my ignorance, is being talked about, it is occupying a particular body at a particular time in a particular space. So vastutaha means occupying this body of becoming this Nilgai. It cannot at the same time become another Nilgai somewhere else. We are talking of this particular Nilgai in the Delhi Zoo, or whatever we want to say, in the sanctuary in Delhi, animal sanctuary outside of Delhi, if we say, for example. So then that particular Nilgai cannot become a mango at the same time, cannot appear as a dog at the same time. So this is called vastutaha parichinnatvam. So deshatah space wise, kalatah time wise, vastutah object wise, limitations asti, limitations are there. These kind of limitations are there for what? For all objects, whether they are objects of cognition or whether they are objects of ignorance. All the objects suffer from these threefold limitations. But the light of the Atma, the consciousness, that light of awareness which shines simultaneously and equally on the known objects and the unknown objects. How can it shine the light on unknown objects? They are discovered as unknown. That's all. They are uncovered as being covered. That's what we mean. So then, that light is free from deshatah, kalatah, vastutah, parichinnatvam. That light is totally free. That light is not subject to time-wise, space-wise, object-wise constrictions or limitations. This is the difference between the cognizer, you, and the cognized. Whereas the cognized, even when it's uncognized, is subject to threefold constraints. the cognizer, the truth of the cognizer, that is you, is free of all constraints. And this is what is the message, simply put, of this particular verse. So jnana jnane, so jnanam and ajnanam. So ajnanam means ignorance of, again, this particular time bound, place bound, object bound vastu, and then jnanam of certain vastus, etc. Then tad vishayau, the objects, and then tad ahankarah evacha, and the I notion that attaches or identifies with itself as the knower. So when I say ayam ghatah janami, so the jna dhatu, jna to know, this is just in the most abstract sense, jna to know. But then I convert it into the first person singular present tense verb by adding a me there, because after all it's all about me. So in Sanskrit also we recognize that janami. Me, I am the I. So the I notion has recast itself, has suddenly had a new rebirth as knower. Janami means aham jnata, I am the knower. And then what janami, what do you know? Kim janasi, what do you know? Then you can say, I know ghatam janami, I know the pot. The pot shines as known. So then in relation to the pot I become knower. Correct? So the ahankara has a special place because in relation to this knowledge and ignorance of objects that are time bound, place bound, object bound, because in relation to these objects the ahankara first fluffs itself up and says, I am the knower, look at me, I know, I know, I know. And then what? Nilgai, oh, I don't know, I'm ignorant. Then, so the inflated ahankara as the knower, and the sad, deflated, shy, shameful, and apologetic ahankara as the ignorant person. All, this too is a superimposition. This too is a spoof on that light of lights, which is the I, which is not the which is not the knower, which is not the known, and which is not the objects of knowledge, which is not the objects of ignorance, and which is not the ahankara, the I notion, the ego that grabs itself, any kind of a handhold, foothold it can get as knower, known, etc., as knower, as ignorant. No, I am free of the burden of being a knower. Although it can give a certain happiness in the beginning, the burden of being a knower is a burden, because if I am a knower, then I am limited, because I am not the objects of knowledge are other than I. So there is no Advaita possible, there is no oneness possible at all. And then what does, so then tad ahankara, so the ahankara is part of the what is it called, part of this plot, the plot for what is the plot, the plot to be finite. That is this ahankara, the plot to be finite, the plot to continue to be a samsarin. And everybody by now who has taken a few classes knows the meaning of samsarin, the one who is in samsara. And the opposite of that is Vedantin, the one who is in Vedanta. So ideally what should we be? Samsara out and Vedantin. Okay, out of samsara into Vedanta, that is what we need. So now so the ahankara is mentioned separately, because that is the one that is the owner upper of the states of I am ignorant, I am knowledgeable, I am knowledgeable, I am ignorant, I am knowledgeable, I am ignorant. Think of how tiring this is to go through this life after life after life. Ecstasy, agony, ecstasy, agony. And mostly agony, because one is outnumbered by the things that one doesn't know, the Jagat being infinite, and because the Jagat is Brahman, so Brahman is infinite. And so the Jagat, there are so many names and forms, and then most of them you don't know. And then so one is always sad, you see, because one identifies with the either the knower or the one who is ignorant. That's why the ahankara is mentioned separately. So now the morning meditations for a jnani is entails what? Yena bhumna jnana jnane vishayau ahankarascha prakashyante. येन भूम्ना प्रकाश्यन्ते तदेव अहम् इति अहम तदेव अहम हि अहमेव तत्. So now the jnani abstracts from this particular cut up version of knower, known, knower, not knower, knower, all these alternating realities which keep it in samsara, which keep this I notion trapped in samsara. And why is the I notion? What is samsara? Samsara is this knower known divide. Any kind of an as though divide is samsara, and especially when one doesn't know, it is as though it is samsara square. That is the problem. And so how to get out of samsara instantaneously is given here. Yena bhumna, by which bhuma. Bhuma is a name for consciousness that appears in the 7th chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad, where Narada, a highly regarded, highly erudite sage who knew a lot of things and who prided himself to a certain extent as the knower, goes to Lord Sanat Kumara, the direct disciple of Brahmaji, and begs to be instructed in the knowledge that removes all sorrow, i.e. Vedanta. He complains, he says, I know so much, I know such a lot of things, but still I grieve. Grivami, I suffer from grief. So please help me. Shokasya param tarayatu bhavan. Please help me, take me across the ocean of sorrow. And Sanat Kumara points this very thing out. You know everything. You know the 4 Vedas, you know this, you know that, you know all kinds of things. You are a walking dictionary, you are a walking thesaurus, you are a walking encyclopedia of Hinduism, etc., Hindu Dharma, everything you know. But you don't know that by which you know. You don't know that one thing because of which everything is known. What is that? You. And me, who? You. I'm going to give you a new namakarna, new name. What is this new name? Bhuman. And it declines as like Atman. Bhuma, Atma, Bhuma. And then somebody asked at the last retreat, one of the questions, when we had that Mandukya retreat, somebody asked, why so many names for this one Atma? Won't it be confusing? Somebody asked. So we have Atma, check, Brahman, check, and then we have what else? We have Turiya, one more, and then we have Bhuma, and then we have Omkara, all these things, Pranava, so many epithets for the Atma, and already this one Atma to be known, and then so many names, and it will just get confusing. Why should we have so many names for one Atma and get ourselves confused? In fact, it's not to make one confused. It's to wake one up. Otherwise, it will be like that gentleman who came to Pujya Swamiji and said the following. You know what he said? He said, Swamiji, I listened to you 10 years ago. He was some kind of a service, transferable job. So, government service. So, I was posted very close to Coimbatore. I was posted, so I was able to come to the ashram and listen to you. Then my job took me different places, and now I have retired and come back, and I'm listening to you again after 10 years. And in this time, I'm finding that you are only talking about two things: Atma, Brahman, Atma, Brahman, A for Atma, B for Brahman, all this time. Isn't there something else you can talk about? And so Swamiji said, actually, I'm only talking of one thing. that that is seen as two, that is seen as many. That's what has to be understood. And then he gave a beautiful talk that day. He was going to talk about something else, but then since this topic came up, he gave this beautiful talk on why Atma has so many names, and why Atma can afford to have numerous more names. Why? Because we are trying to describe the indicators for the infinite, which happens to be yourself. And this understanding of the infinite has to go through a mind that is that is like the eye of a needle, highly finite, highly tunnel vision, and conditioned by various raga, dvesha, prejudices, preferences, notions, and ideologies. And if the thread of Vedanta has to make an inroads, even, even the Shastra will have to wear glasses, because this is what the whole thing is. And so if the thread of Vedanta has to make the inroads in this Jada Buddhi, in this Jada Mati, in this mind that is so conditioned by all kinds of things: sorrow, fear, greed, what else, pride, raga, dvesha, and all kinds of notions. Vedanta should be like this, Atma should be like this, Brahman should be like this, all kinds of wrong notions mostly. And if the thread of Vedanta has to penetrate the eye of this needle, which is the needle like mind, narrow, little, just one shot you get, so then definitely, what do you have to do to the thread? You have to you have to sharpen the thread. You have to make it sharp. And in the olden days, when the women used to make whatever, when the women used to thread the needle, they used to put some starch at the end of the thread, like a little bit of tamarind juice, or little bit of rice kanji, the rice starch, water from the rice, and then let it dry a little bit, blow on it, and then do that, so that that kind of a sharpening should be there. And so and the Vedanta makes the knowledge sharp enough to penetrate by using these upayas of various names to describe that one thing. And also it helps to break the monotony. It helps to break the monotony, and whenever there is monotony, there is the ahankara checks out, the mind checks out. Atma, I know that. Brahman, I know that. Bhuma, oh, what is that? Then suddenly one pays a little more attention. That is the whole idea. Bhuma, what does Bhuma mean? Again, it means big. And Narada himself defines Bhuma. Yad alpam, he says, tan martyam, tanna bhuma. First he defines bhuma by what it is not. He says that which is small, alpam, that which is small, is always finite. Smallness we have already defined, that which suffers from space-wise, time-wise, and object-wise limitation is called small. Whereas the light of consciousness, which recognizes that which is small, is all. It is not constrained by these three, this triputi, this tripod of smallness. It is not constrained. It is all, not small. So that is the difference. So bhuma is all. Bhuma is that which is not small. Because that which is small, the second thing Narada says, is that it's by definition finite. Yad alpam tat martyam. Martyam means finite, subject to death. So that which is small is not long lasting, is subject to death. Is definitely subject to death. It is not having any kind of a any kind of infinity. It is not infinite. It is, in other words, not bhuma, not big. So yad alpam tat martyam tanna bhuma. That is not bhuma. Then what is bhuma? That because of which you cognize everything as martyam, 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 martyam 1, martyam 2, martyam 3, martyam 4, because of which you cognize everything as martyam, that is free of finitude. And that happens to be you. That consciousness, unbridled by space, unlimited by time, and unconstrained by being a particular form or an object in time and space, that is Bhuma. Bhuma means limitlessly big. And it is just that, where that awareness is neither cognizer nor cognized. It is that which blesses I as ignorant, it blesses the ahankara as knowledgeable, it blesses the ahankara as ignorant without getting into this knowledge ignorance dyad. It transcends the knowledge of an object and the ignorance of an object, that particular oppositional consciousness it is not. It transcends that to shine the light equally on something that is covered and something that is uncovered both. Like there were two thieves that went into a house in the dead of the night with the idea of robbing it. And as they were collecting, as they were casing the joint to see what all to collect, and as they were filling their bags with all the things from the house, suddenly the owners came, or better still, the owners called the police, and the police came with powerful flashlights, which they started to look around. And then what? One fellow was caught off guard with his hands on the silver, a big silver bowl or something that was there. And then, so the light uncovered something that was already there. The other fellow, being of better reflexes, found one blanket and then went under that and sat. And then, as the flashlight swept over that covering, the covering also came to light. And that first instance, the owner of the house or the police, whoever was shining the light, missed it. But then they came back to it because the blanket was bobbing up and down in rhythm to his breath. And so, and then once that light was shone on it, the covering became apparent. Okay, this blanket is covering something. That is what the light of Atma is. It's neither the dumb robber who did not have time to hide, nor even the robber who thought himself very clever, who had the time to go under some, quilt or blanket that happened to be there, under a throw. But then the light was thrown on the throw, and so the covering was discovered. So that consciousness by which all coverings, including the fact I am ignorant of Atma, including that covering, is discovered, is free of any covering, that is what is Bhuma. That is the only thing that is infinite, that is the only thing that is worth knowing. So we don't have time to go into everything that is Bhuma, but he also says this Bhuma, knowing this Bhuma makes you happy. Makes you happy not in the sense of happy now, sad later. Makes you discover your nature as happiness, incarnate happiness, personified. Makes you discover your own nature. How? Because what do you want to be? Limitless. And that's why one wants to have an out of body experience. One wants to get out of this body that is full of aches, pains, full of finitude, full of limitations. One definitely wants to improve the mind to be limitless. Unfortunately, the finite is finite, the infinite is infinite. The finite cannot become infinite, and the infinite cannot become finite. So therefore what? Because the finite is got a date of birth and a date of death. Infinite is free of time, so there are no dates of when the infinite came into being. Infinite is you that never came into being, and so therefore catch hold of this awareness which is you. But where is this awareness? The one who is asking where is this awareness, that is where the awareness is centered. So if I ask you a question, are you here? That which makes you say yes, that is that awareness, Sakshi. That is the witness. And catch hold of this bhuma which is the witness. Yena bhumna, bhumna third case, by which bhuma all this is lit up. Prakashyante, by which it is all lit up. What is lit up? The world of objects that are known to me and the world of objects unknown to me, both are lit up. So the world of objects known to me is like the first robber that came to light when the flashlight was shown by the authorities. And the world of objects covered in ignorance is like the robber that was shivering from fear, yeah, underneath the quilt which he found to hide himself. So the covering also comes to light, because of which light? That light is you, that light is Bhuma. And then what do the sages do? The sages identify with themselves as themselves as Bhuma. And then tad aham hi ahameva tat. That Bhuma is myself. Mahavakya, that Bhuma is Ishvara, because Ishvara is nothing but consciousness with a particular unlimited upadhi called overlordship, etc. And then Ishvara is again that same timeless consciousness. Ishvara is again that same unbound by time, space, and object consciousness, but with a particular upadhi, a kind of a namarupa, which is what? Which is infinite, which is free of any constraints. A powerful upadhi invested with the ability to project, sustain, and take back the world, the universe. The jiva is also that same consciousness, as though indwelling in a particular upadhi that is finite, a finite body, a finite mind, as though indwelling, just like the pot space is different from room space. Room space or football field space is Ishvara, and then pot space is what? Jiva. But from the standpoint of space, you cannot say space is constricted by a little pot, because then all I have to do is ask the question, is space in the pot or does pot exist in space? And then that confusion goes away immediately, because there is no such thing really speaking as pot space. Pot space from the standpoint of the upadhi vashat, by the force of the upadhi, one says, oh, this is a small person. This is a tiny Purusha, the Jiva, big Purusha, Ishvara. No such thing from the standpoint of consciousness. From the standpoint of consciousness, undivided, from the standpoint of an individual, divided, as though divided. And so therefore, I am this Bhuma, one part of the Mahavakya, but then, Bhuma is nothing but me alone. Both are important because both are talked about here, and not just for the meter. So, what does he say? Yena bhumna jnana tad vishayau ahankara eva cha prakashyante te sarve. Then what happens? Tat that bhuma, sabhuma ahameva hi tat. I am that, and that is me. I mean, why is it mentioned and emphasized in both ways? There is a reason for that. Because usually what happens, we are used to a certain way of looking at things, after studying some Vedanta. Jagat is Brahman. Brahman is not the Jagat. Pot is Atma. Atma is not the pot. And then, waker is I am not the waker. Sleeper is I am not the sleeper. Dreamer is I am not the dreamer. So by this time we are used to this drill. It's all just one way. Vedanta street goes only one way. So everything is this Atma. Atma is not any one thing. But here, when we talk about Atma from the standpoint of this light of consciousness, so there is a owning up that is encouraged, and that constitutes the Prathasmaranam, morning prayers for the Jnani. And so when the regular person is rattling off the Rudram, or mouthing the Gayatri mantra, what is the Jnani doing? The Jnani is engaged in subtle contemplation, is enjoying the fact that here is the only possible two-way street. The meaning of the word I is nothing but Bhuma. And what is this Bhuma? The Bhuma there is defined as I alone. The truth of this I is Bhuma. Bhuma is me. I am Bhuma. Mahavakya here. And both ways it goes, because the I is now redefined, lifted as, so to speak, from being identified with either objects of knowledge or objects of ignorance. And then from this Ahankara is shaken off even the status of being a subject. That is also shaken off, because the status of being subject, a subject, is a relational status in relation to objects. I am the subject. So that is also all shaken off. And then what is there? What remains? What remains is Bhuma. So what is this I? I is equal to Bhuma. Bhuma is equal to I. Both ways, in order to assimilate that knowledge, in order to take away the Atmani Anatma Adhyasa, Anatmani Atma Adhyasa, to take away the two ways of confusion and getting into projection. Like in the Atma, in the I, the not I is superimposed. Like when you say I am a mortal, that is Atmani Anatma Adhyasa. I am a mortal. And then Anatmani Atma Adhyasa. So when you say I am a mortal, I am as good as this body, that means what? So the Atma is reduced to being finite. So on the Atma, which is infinite, finitude is projected. And the opposite mistake is also possible, and one nurtures both these mistakes life after life, until the dawn of the sun of Vedanta happens in one's life, which is a great blessing. So what is the other mistake? The other mistake is Anatmani Atma Adhyasa. In everything that is finite, I try to see the infinite. How? Because I want to make everything infinite in the world. Starting with the body. The body, of course, is finite, but then for every notion connected to the body, there is a potion, there is a lotion to get rid of that notion. Something or the other, I keep trying to. The body is always, from the day it is born, it is got an expiry date written in invisible ink. One doesn't know. And that expiry date you keep trying to erase. You keep trying to make it longer and longer and longer. And then what? Then one has to go one day. But that day should not come. And everything has to be kept intact. How is that possible? And so this is what is called Anatmani Atma Adhyasa. Making the finite as though into infinite. Propping it on something, always giving it crutches, and for everything that is unable to stand, have a leg to stand on. So these two types of adhyasa are gone in the contemplation of oneself as Bhuma. Once I am Bhuma. So Atmani Anatma Adhyasa is not possible. I am not a mortal. So you see, that takes care of the first kind of projection. I am not a mortal. What are you? Bhuma. And then when you say Bhuma is me, then Atmani Anatma Adhyasa is also not possible. So you don't try to make the finite into infinite. You don't try to make the infinite into finite. So both ways it is a nice contemplative exercise. And this is the Jnani's morning prayers. whereas everybody is running around in search of Ishta Devatas, in search of all kinds of, blessings from Ganapati, blessings from this one, blessings from that one, and and worrying, oh, today I forgot Ganapati prayer, will will it have a bad effect because I just forgot to say, I forgot to talk about the Ganesha, and then so will he give me lots of obstacles? Oh, what should I do? Should I do prayaschitta? Should I do some kind of an act of atonement? Whereas the ajnani is wandering around in the kshetra, in the field of action and consequence, even even in the arena of devotion. Here, the devotion is completely centered on understanding the truth of the self as Bhuma, as neither the knowledgeable one nor the ignorant one, neither the subject of subject of knowledge nor the object of knowledge. Nothing. I am that. I am that which is free of being the knower or the known. I am free of ignorance, I am free of knowledge of objects, I am not the neither the knower nor the ignorant one. I am Bhuma, because of which all these conditions shine. So this is the Jnani's prayer, which has to be by hearted, I think, and chanted every day. Okay, next one, fourth one. विश्वश्च तेजसः प्राज्ञः नास्म्यहं सत्स्वरूपतः यतस्ते तु प्रकाश्यन्ते तदहं नास्मि चेतरत्. Same thing. And then after the Mandukya retreat, this will come very, very easily, because it says something which is very beautiful. So here, I am not the three states of existence. Simply put, that is the message of this verse. I am not the three states of existence. What are the three states of existence? That we all know: waker, sleeper, dreamer. I am neither the waker, nor the sleeper, nor the dreamer. And this we have seen in the Mandukya Upanishad in detail. So Vishwaha means waker. The waking individual is called Vishwa, and na aham asmi, I am not the waker. Then who is awake? If you are not aware who is awake, then you cannot say the neighbor is awake. So there is a little bit of confusion here. And here we have to go back to the one-way street. What is that? Waker is me, Vekami, but I am not the waker. This is where we have to help ourselves to this particular understanding. Then Vishwahacha, and then Vishwahacha na aham asmi. I am not Vishwa, I am not the waker. Taijasahacha na aham asmi. Na asmi aham. Taijasa means I am not the dreamer. Dreamer cannot happen without me, but I am not just the dreamer, I am not just the waker, because these are all finite identifications. Why? Because one cancels out the other, pure and simple. Just see, because you cannot be waking and dreaming at the same time. Oh yes, I can. It happens all the time in Vedanta class. If you argue like that with me, I will say that is not the dream talked about by the Shastra. The dream here is when you are, after sleep that which comes, or before waking that which comes, that is called the dream state. So the dream state cancels the sleep state. You are no longer simply having sushupti or deep sleep. And the waking state cancels both the dream state and the sleep state. So each one cancelling out the other means each one is a tentative identity, meaning it is time bound. And it enjoys time-wise constriction. It's extremely temporal. So for 7 hours a day, I am a sleeper. Rest of the time, I'm a zombie waker, but somehow zombied waker. And then dreamer for a few seconds every night. REM state. I am a dreamer. dreamer, sleeper, waker, all these things, these are all time-bound identities assumed by Bhuma, here known as Turiya. Turiya means fourth. Fourth in relation to these three, because the Upanishad helps us out by going along with the mass ignorance. So therefore it just helps us out, but really there is no fourth because there is no one to begin with. It is non-dually one, so where is 2, 3 and 4? Not possible. But here, so prajnah na aham asmi, so by the same argument I am not the sleeper, prajnah sleeper. I am not the sleeper, I am not the waker, I am not the dreamer, but the states of dreamer, waker, sleeper, the one who cognizes I am that. And what are you? Sat Swarupaha. He gives a cause. So tasil, this particular what is that called, suffix, means it has a cause. It is a causal suffix. And there is a sutra panchamyas tasil. So tasil means it should be used in the fifth case, ablative case. It's often used in place of the fifth case, and so which means the cause of action, the origin, or the cause here. So what is the cause by which you are saying? What is the logic? What is the cause because of which you are declaring yourself to neither be Vishwa, waker, Taijasa, dreamer, Prajna, sleeper? Na aham asmi. Why? Sat Swarupataha. Because that taha, that tasil, has the force of because. Because of what? Because I am of the nature of Sat. And what is this Sat? Sadeva idam agre asit. That Sat, the nature of existence itself, that lends its existence and its being. It blesses the sleeping state, it blesses the waking state, it blesses the dreaming state without becoming anything in particular. Without losing its swarupa, losing its identity. It shines as sleep, it shines in the form of dream, it shines as waking states, but it is not any one of them. And this we have seen in detail, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but just enough to understand. Just enough to understand that this is a very big what is that? This is a very big pitfall, considering oneself the waker. Why only waker? Dreamer, sleeper also, but the waker has a certain force. There is a certain force and a certain kind of a what's that? A clawing identity that one suffers from with regard to the waking state. Because as I mentioned earlier, in the other two states there is primarily bhoktritvam. There one is mostly an experiencer. One is not doing anything in sleep, and one is as though doing something in dream, but that doing is without volition, without free will. So it is questionable whether it can be considered an action, which is why if you rob a bank in the dream, you don't turn yourself when you wake up. So because one is not culpable for actions done in the dream. So therefore, in the waking state alone, one is a karta and a bhokta. One is an experiencer and one is the producer of the results of action, karta. That's why there is a kind of a vicious loop, a very pernicious loop between actor and then the producing, actor acting to produce the result of action, then being unhappy with the result of action, and then acting again to reverse the results of action, when repeatedly, life after life after life, day after day after day. And and here where the jiva is not hopeless at all, even after so many false starts, even after so many failures, one still somewhere deep down is convinced that I am the producer of the results of action. And it has taken the Gita to Bhagavad Gita to say karmani eva adhikarahate. And the Gita says it out front, no ambiguity in the sentence. You are only the producer of actions, not the results thereof. You don't produce the results of action, they come from me, Bhagavan. But still, despite the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna shouting in the middle of the battlefield, strong enough to be heard, minus megaphone, and still people don't understand this. This is what is samsara, getting tethered to the waking state, where one is under the misapprehension that one is the producer of action, and one is enjoying therefore the results of action that one is producing. Bhogaya karma. One is not happy being a karta. One wants kartritvam. One wants to be the agent of action. One produces action in order to, so to speak, quote unquote, heavy quotes all the way, in order to, so to speak, enjoy the results. And of course, the results aren't enjoyable. Why? Because you have to deal with a mind that is steeped in complaints, a mind that is full of raga dveshas. No result, even if Bhagavan gives the result of action, which Bhagavan does all the time, still one will find fault even with the boon given by Bhagavan. If Bhagavan were to appear and say, okay, you are blessed with enough wealth for 3 generations, can I go now? And the jiva will say, wait, oh Lord, 1 minute. What about the 4th generation? Turiya, What about the 4th generation? Even if Bhagavan were to give such a complete boon, 3 generations of your lineage is taken care of, and you are not even going to be there to witness that. But still, there is some want that makes its presence felt like a pebble in the shoe, tiny enough not to be found, but powerful enough to cause a blister. This is what is the thing is. So you cannot produce the result of action, and even if you think you are producing the result of action, you are not happy with it anyway. And then after that, what? You have to produce more action in order to compensate for that which didn't happen, and in order to compensate for the opposite of what you wanted happened. And so the whole thing continues. The waking state is therefore fraught with the double curses of being identified as a karta and a bhokta, and therefore it is very difficult to disidentify from the waking state. But with the help of Upanishad study, especially Mandukya, this is possible. By how? By identifying as that which blesses the waking state. I am aware of being an awaker. I am aware of being the disappointed person. That means you are no longer disappointed. You are the Sakshi. And so the truth of this Sakshi is Turiya, the one that owns up the waker, dreamer, sleeper states without being any one of them. So yataha means again that tasil is there, yasmat karanat, from which, because of which reason. Te means Vishvataijasa prajnaha, so prakashyante. So by which te means they are lit up, they come to light. By which awareness, by which consciousness here known as Turiya, by which consciousness, which is the truth of myself, by which they come to light. Tadaham, I am that one alone. Na asmi, I am not. Cha itarat. Itarat means I am not any other state. I am not the waker, not the dreamer, not the sleeper, not any of them. And so, very beautiful morning contemplations, which you can replace with the shlokas, etc. if you are ready, or you take a little extra time after the shlokas, just sit quietly and contemplate on these 2 verses. So now, before we say the closing prayer, one announcement I have. So there are lots of classes coming up, and then there is so I'm going to have I'm going to post something here in the chat pod. So open this chat pod, and then that will have the upcoming Vedanta retreats and talks, because there is suddenly lot of things happening. So I have given the timings of all that, and then I'm going to put it here. So you can download that and you can click on it, and then there are some clickable links, and then it's also posted on the arshavm.org website, so you can join in. Okay, so that is the announcement, and we'll say the closing prayer, and I hope to see you for the Bhagavad Gita talks starting very soon. ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्तिः 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 हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ. So I think this week we will not have Shatashloki because we will be studying Bhagavad Gita around the same time. Okay, that's another announcement. So I hope everybody got the PDF, and if not, just go to the website arshavm.org. All right, all the best. Take care. Om.
Thank you, Amma.
Thank you everybody. Om
Thank
Tat
you.
Sat. Om Om.
Thank you, Swamini.
Thank you. Take care. Om.
Thank you.